Welcome, everybody, back to the Insider Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about our loss against Austin FC, which was a 2-0 loss, our second loss of the season. So we're going to talk about that, talk about all the, the good, the bad, mainly bad, about that game, talk about our thoughts and opinions, all the good stuff that you all want to hear. Of course, we got Galaxy news to talk about, and also we have our preview against the Seattle Sounders this week. So yeah, it should be a good conversation, should be, a lot of things to talk about. And of course, with me as always is LA Galaxy Central in a very peculiar position than what we normally have. But anyways, how are you doing, man? What's up?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Obviously, at least right now, I'm in a comfortable location. I'm right on my couch, which is way better than the old chair I have in the office, so that's good. But my Wi-Fi crashed out, so I couldn't use the computer. I had to do this for the day. I had to join through my phone using cellular data, which, I guess. But for today, it will work. It's not something I want to do going forward. But yeah, just like the Galaxy, right? We need to find solutions for things that don't work out. I guess this is what we're going to do for today.
Yeah, exactly. Modern problems require modern solutions. So, and this is one of them, I guess, which again, it's only going to be for the week, hopefully. But, yeah, of course, something different, I guess, than what we normally do. But as long as we're talking and I can hear you and you can hear me, then, all things as well. Right. But, yeah, of course, I guess this is what we're going to have to do for this week. But anyways, other than that, let's talk about the Galaxy because, of course, that happened over the weekend. And like I mentioned, it was a 2-0 loss, the second loss of the season where necessarily the Galaxy, you can just say they didn't play a good game this weekend. It was a game where I think a lot of people were not very happy about. A lot of people were very disappointed about in the way they went about in this game and what had happened in this game. But yeah, of course, it was early on where Austin scored. They get two early goals, and that's how kind of the whole game went. It was just those two goals. Of course, Austin played. I guess for them it was a good game. They went out with the right mindset, right tempo, and everything that they needed to do. But yeah, so we ended up losing this game. But how'd you feel about this game? What were your thoughts about it? And how'd you feel about the Galaxy's performance in this one?
Yeah, obviously very disappointing from start to finish. We started the game very poorly just out of the gates. I feel like the Galaxy got very lucky to not have a penalty kick conceded against them just a few minutes in the game when Julian Alde pushed down Heider Obrian. I thought that was a possible penalty that the Galaxy got away with. The refs didn't end up calling it, so I kind of viewed that as a bit of a wake-up call, like we have to switch on now. But as it turns out, that didn't really make a difference for the Galaxy because just 2 minutes later, Diego Rubio would score. You open up the scoring. You're down 1-0 on the road about 5-6 minutes in the game. That's a really bad position. Then the defense gets caught out again on a counterattack with Obrian, giving the Galaxy a lot of problems with the speed. Our old, slow defense can't keep up with him. Then it's 2-0 on the road, 20 minutes into the match, and it's a really bad position to be in. Then from there, you always had a certain amount of belief we could get back into the game because we have shown in the past, even last season, when we're down 2 goals, we found ways to get ties. Even this season, getting a win from down 2-0. But the more you watch the game, the more you just realize that goal wasn't going to happen. We didn't really create anything the whole game. I think, from every single aspect of the game, I think you could say we lost it, and it was just very disappointing. It's a performance I didn't expect. I had more expectations than what I saw, but the Galaxy just didn't deliver, and they came out on the loser side of things, and like everyone admitted, we deserved to lose that game for sure.
Yeah, honestly, and the way I looked at this game, because, and first off, I didn't even get to watch the game live because I was, out in the weekend in Vegas, went to a festival, things like that. I had a great time, right? But point is, I didn't get to see the game live, and I know everybody back home watching the game live and with an early game time start weren't very happy. So I had to see what had happened, of course, with watching the replays and things like that. But yeah, after looking at that game, of course, yes, the Galaxy did not play well. There was a game where they didn't really, play to their best. But the way I looked at it as well was just how Austin came out in this game, right? I think they went out with, trying to control the game, went out setting a tone for the game and just with the right mindset, right? I think when you looked at it even with the first goal, with the, 6 minutes in, like you saw in those first 6 minutes, it was all Austin, all in our, in our side of the field and everything like that. And it was just, you can tell that right away that Austin wanted to win this game and they wanted to win it more than anything. And I think you kind of have to give credit with Austin just how they went out and, they deserved it. They wanted it more than I guess we did in a sense, but, I don't think the Galaxy came, they didn't go out right. I think it looked like they had, just woken up. I mean, even with the early game time start, like it looked like, they just got out of bed, you can say, right? But yeah, I mean, of course, like when you look at with the team, I think yes, there was some bad things that we had, but I also just think Austin just played a very good game in this one. They were very well defensively as well in this game, and yeah, they just did the right things. And the Galaxy, I mean, it was just wasn't their day, I guess, in this one. But also, there was some things that we did learn in this game, and some things that we definitely need to fix going forward for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Austin played a very good game defensively. Like I watched a lot of their games this season. I don't think they've ever defended that well through any game. Like I watched their opening day versus Minnesota where they conceded 2 goals. I watched their 4-3 thriller versus San Jose. They conceded 3 goals at home. Both those were at home, by the way. So I'm really surprised to see how well Austin defended against our attack. We had this high flying attack. And not only did we not score, it feels like we didn't really create any chances at all. Like the only real chance I can say we created was on that free kick where Ricky Pooch took it quickly to Joseph Pencil and plays him through on goal and forces Brad Stuver into a great save. But other than that, I think the only other half chance even was the Ricky Pooch shot from outside the box. But even then, that was like a half chance maybe. It's probably one the keeper still should have saved. But other than those two opportunities, I feel like we just did nothing basically offensively. And to me, that was a surprise. Maybe not winning the game wasn't the biggest deal in the world, but the fact that we created no chances or never showed an opportunity to get back into the game, I think was incredibly disappointing and not something we've really seen this year.
I mean, when you look at this Galaxy offense, like we've scored so many goals. We're one of the best offenses in the league, and with how many goals we scored and things like that. And yeah, this was a bit, it was a bit interesting to see that because this was something that I guess none of us really expected. And, we thought our offense could have played better. Obviously, there was no Dejan Joveljic in this game, which, could have played a factor in this game. But in all honesty, I don't think it really did. Even if you had Dejan in that one, I think Austin defensively just knew how to shut down this defense, in which I guess you can say it was, I mean, you're going to have those moments where I guess like our offenses could have an off day and things like that. And, maybe this was one of them. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't that many chances in this game where you were like, oh, like that should have been a goal, or hey, like if we would have done this right, like we would have had this many goals. It's like there wasn't really that many chances where you could say that was, we had those opportunities. And again, that's where I credit Austin, because Austin were very great defensively. They just, knew how to shut down this team. Like even when, some parts of our offense aren't working, something else comes up to help us, right? And I think they got everything down in this one when it came down to Austin. And I think and then when you look at the other side of the ball defensively, then you had a little bit of issues there. Obviously, there was a question of depth with Martin Cáceres going down, and I think only playing the first half, and then things like that. And defensively wasn't the best game. I guess you can say we didn't concede a set piece, which is progress in itself. But other than that, like in the run to play, that's when you didn't have everything going for you, and you conceded early on. And so like, yeah, I mean, both sides of the ball wasn't there for this Galaxy team. And again, you kind of have to give credit to Austin, but you also kind of have to look at the Galaxy a little bit and say, hey, why didn't we play better defensively, or why couldn't we get these offensive chances? But yeah, I mean, obviously there was some questions, I guess, to be asked after that game. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, obviously, of course, there was for this game, probably wasn't the best for sure. Um, I think, when it came down to it, I think depth was one of the questions, I think, in this one. Where did you feel like, depth, you kind of saw a little bit more depth issues in this one, especially, I guess, the defense was kind of the big one of them. But did you ever see with this game and how it went, do you think there was some more, I guess, depth issues or questions about the depth after this game?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only about this game, but also going forward, right? Like Joveljic has a hip injury. Van listed him as week to week, so that's pretty concerning. I don't know if we're going to see him in Seattle. Honestly, I don't expect to see him. We have Ricky Pooch down this weekend because he got suspended. We're not going to see him this weekend. And I just feel like with our depth in the defense too, it's just not very good. We have some depth on this team that's just not MLS caliber players. And it's getting kind of concerning for me, like I said before. It's getting concerning going forward because now we're in the month of May and we have 2 midweek games coming up. So like we have some injuries, we have some suspensions, we have some old players on our roster, and we're only getting more games coming in too now with the midweek games coming in. So our depth, it has to step up. But the question is it capable of stepping up right now? No, they have not shown enough for me. But I mean, yeah, if we're gonna, have a good month of May or try to, get back on track a little bit with some more wins or points in general, I mean, the depth is gonna have to be a factor this month. We can't just play our starters, every single game going forward.
Right, exactly. And this was where I think we talked about it even a little bit last week. Where it was kind of like, like sure, like the Galaxy have been playing well with this very tough schedule, but it was now the matter of fact when you get into the dog days of summer, right? When you get those midweek games and things like that, and we're starting to get that this month, right? We have two midweek games. We have six total games, in general for the month of May. I think it was, and so like, yeah, obviously the depth right now. There, I mean, I will say defensively, like yes, I know a lot of people had questions of depth defensively, but you look at the positive sides. Jalen Neal did play in this game, so he's coming back, I guess, in a sense, and then you also have Garces to come at some point. So at least you're gonna get your reinforcements within the defense. So maybe you're not too worried about it yet. But then when you look at the offense, of course, no Dejan Joveljic. We've talked about Miguel Berry so many times on this podcast already. I'm saying, he's not the best, I guess, option after Dejan, right? And then Ricky Puja, I mean, obviously with the suspension, which is a big deal, it's like, who's going to step up in that role? Obviously, you can put Diego Fagundes in there, but is he the best option for that spot? And I don't know. Like, obviously we're going to have to see, but, like, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think defensively, I don't think the depth could be different within the next few weeks, but I think some of those offensive pieces need to step up, and I think mainly it's just the striker position because who knows when Dejan's going to come back, but I think like there was some questions with the depth, but maybe not overly concerning yet, at least in some points, but yes, definitely there is still some concerns to be said.
I will also say we need some right back depth too. Like I just don't trust Cuevas at all right now. When he started last season, he was not very good, and I'm just not feeling it. I'm not buying into him right now, which is something I'm going to talk about with the academy maybe a bit later if I get to it. But I'm just not buying into Cuevas right now, and I also think we need a bit of midfield depth. Like Cerrillo is fantastic depth. Okay, that's good. But like Delgado's depth is Daniel Aguirre, and do you really want Daniel Aguirre being a starter on your team? Probably not. Like you could probably do better. And then at the center attacking midfield position, you just have Diego Fagundes sort of playing out of position in a sense, playing there. You could probably upgrade there too. Then offensively, I think, yeah, definitely at striker is the number one priority. Easily to get a backup at winger. You could argue we're probably okay, even though maybe some of our wingers are a bit unproven there at the backups too. But yeah, I still think we need a right back in that midfield too. I'd just say before offense, like we also need to probably strengthen the roster a little bit more if we can.
I will say right back there, you still like obviously you have Cuevas, but I mean I feel like there's also maybe a little bit some options in there too. Like maybe even Nelson could even play right back at sometimes. Maybe I know he's a left back, but maybe he can also be switched up in there. And I guess he's a caliber MLS caliber backup in that sense. Obviously we've seen Cerrillo do it in emergency situations. So I mean right back isn't too concerning. I mean, I guess yes, Cuevas. We've even talked about last season didn't really have the best of situations, but again, also a young player, a player who still needs a lot of experience in playing. I guess so I don't. I guess right back you could see as a need, but I don't know if it's like oh like yeah we need that like right away. But no, I mean, but in terms of the midfield, yeah, you could definitely upgrade it in there. Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. Cerrillo's good. Daniel Aguirre is only in some certain situations where he's a good depth piece. Like obviously we've talked about that in multiple situations, and then Ricky Puig, you basically have nobody in the as a second, I guess. So like that, and even then, like that's going to be a hard you know I guess shoes to fill when it comes to that position because obviously Ricky Puig is the guy of the team, the MVP of the team. So it's like even if you have somebody as a backup, are they going to be as you know contributing as Ricky Puig? Like I mean, probably not. Maybe who knows? But at the same time, it's like yes, there are some questions depth. Like obviously, has our depth gotten better over the years? Yes, or like this season? Yes. I mean, we've talked about that before as well. In past weeks where our depth has gotten better, but there are still some things to be filled. Obviously, we can't do anything now because we got to wait till the summer window opens. But as of right now, like after this game, you got to see the depth step up until that time, until the that window opens. So it's going to be an interesting May when it comes to our depth when we have these midweek games. But I think after this game, it does give you a little bit more concern with that situation.
Definitely the age of the defense too. Like you're starting to see some problems with the defense overall. It's kind of going back to our preseason point of the defense. You're starting to see some of those signs where we talked about we didn't really do much with the defense. We just replaced a good right back with a good right back, and maybe like a slightly below average keeper with just an average keeper. You're starting to see the signs of it now. And I feel like we've seen that with past Galaxy teams too. Like they always start off decent defensively. They kind of hold it down the first maybe 1 to 8 weeks, and then after like from week 9 to like the end of the season, the defense just starts to fall apart. And I feel like we're starting to see that right now. Like we started off well defensively. It was just a set piece issue at first, but then maybe the couple of games you're seeing a lot of open play goals now, and you're starting to see the fatigue of players and the liability of players, and it's starting to become a little bit of a problem. We got to see what happens going forward, but there's still definitely concern for the defense, especially if certain guys in there for sure.
I mean, I don't know if it's like you have to say like it's a complete concern now because we don't really know. We have obviously this was just yeah again this is our second loss of the season, so we still got to see a lot more from that depth, right? But I'm just saying this was a good example of that our depth does need to step up, and I think again, you talk about the age again. Like I mentioned before, you're getting Neil, you're getting Garces, you're getting two young players to reinforce that center back position, right? So it's like at least for the center backs, you're not too concerned about it. Left back, you're fine, I guess, and again, right back, you're not too like there is some a bit concerned, but not overly concerned. So it's like I don't know. I don't think like after this one game we got to be like, oh yeah, like everything is a concern yet, or like now everything's a problem. But I mean, after you saw that game, you kind of do have some questions. But I think there's still, a lot of things we got to see from this team, right? And again, this is going to be an interesting month because of those midweek games and things like that. So I think that's, again, you got to see some things, but and it made you ask some questions. But I think there's still a lot of other questions to be answered. If that makes sense, I don't know if I really made sense there.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I mean, obviously, there's things that needs to be happened in that sense, um, but even then, like again, I mean, this was to me for the performance though. Like I think this was just it just wasn't the Galaxy's day in this one. I think that we know that they can play much better in these situations. I think this was just a game where Austin just wanted it more in a sense, and they played very well. I don't know if again, I think a lot of people kind of overreacted in the loss, and people were saying some things, but I really think that it really just wasn't the Galaxy's day in this sense. It really wasn't their day, and it could have been a lot of things, but I mean, again, I look at it as just the way that Austin played, right, and how they went into this game. So I feel like they had it. This was their game, and they're coming off a great form too. I think this was their fourth win. They're above 500, but I forget what was their like record going, before going into this game. But regardless, it's like they were coming off really good form going into this game, and again, that's what happens when you go up against a team with good form too, right? Like it's the matter of who wants it more, and I think Austin wanted it more in this one, and then they got it. So I mean, that's it just wasn't the Galaxy's day in that sort of sense.
Yeah, quite simply, I just say Austin FC beat the Galaxy in every single aspect of the game. When you look at it, there's not one category you can really say the Galaxy won through that match.
No, I don't think so either. Like again, like you look at it defensively, like wasn't that great. Offensively, we were creating chances, and even in the midfield. I mean, think about how many turnovers Austin was creating in this game. Like they won the turnover game, and if you win the turnover game, that's where you're gonna have a good chance of winning, or have a good chance, or have the good chances that you're gonna need. And I think that's and you're right. Like in any category, I think Austin beat us in every single one, and this was and again this a game where the Austin wanted it more, and that is what it is. But again, I think some people were overreacting. You can look at the problems, you can look at the concerns, but at the end of the day, this was just one where it just wasn't the Galaxy's day. But you have any other points about the game before we move on?
No, just not good enough from the Galaxy. Like you said, we got to give a lot of credit to Austin FC. They played better than us. They wanted to win that game more than us, and we just have to take the loss and hopefully try to move on from it.
All right, yeah, I mean, yeah, got to move on from it, but this wasn't a good performance by the Galaxy. But before we move on into other things, let's talk about the players, of course. So let's start off with the defense. You had your usual defense. Excuse me. You had McCarthy, of course. You had Mickey Yamane at right back. Your two center backs was Maya Yoshida, Martin Cáceres, and of course your left back was Julian Aude. Of course, again, like we said, two goals conceded. So how'd you feel about the defense overall in this one, and what were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, it was rough to say the least, right? You start with Julian Alde, and if you had to put a player poll maybe 10 games into the season, who's the most disappointing Galaxy player, I would definitely answer to you it's Julian Alde for sure. I'm very disappointed in him. Like, I wanted him last season. I was always remember vouching for him to be a starter. We traded Raheem Edwards for him. We got rid of Chase Gasper. We gave him the starting spot, and I just think this season so far he hasn't really been good enough. And I know in the past you brought up Caligari as a comparison, but I don't think that's a valid comparison because last season Caligari was coming into the team with no preseason and like no training camp, and the team was really struggling all around him, and it was kind of just a hard environment to come into. And then eventually he really found his form and played well. Without it, it's a different situation. Last year he came into the league, he had 75% of the season about with the Galaxy to figure it all out. Then this season, the difference is he had a full preseason to get it together. And still, we're seeing a lot of just inconsistent performances, not very good. Honestly, I'd say he's put in more poor performances than good performances. And yeah, I get he's a young player. It's going to take time. But, I just expected better. I expected like he'd be what Caligari was in the summer of last year, maybe right now coming out of the gates. And we're just not seeing that so far. And again, this Austin game, I think he really struggled a lot. And Martin Costas, again, a guy that's concerning. We talked about it too. The first couple of weeks of the season, maybe it was fine to start him. We were having one game a week. He looked kind of all right. But now, even like, 8 to 9 weeks in, his body's starting to wear down a lot. You're starting to see a lot of injury problems with him. You're starting to see a lot of fatigue problems with him. Like even last week versus San Jose, he asked to come off, which was concerning. And then this game, he came off after 45 minutes. And I'm just seeing a guy that's starting to wear down. I don't think he's a guy we can even start going forward. And again, like we really need Garces to hit. I can't express that enough, how much we need Garces to be a good signing because Costas is starting to really wear down, and you're really seeing the effects of that. And Yoshida wasn't that good either. Again, lost his man a couple of times. He kind of struggled. Yamane was just okay. McCarthy, you can't really blame him too much. But the defense, again, just too inconsistent for my liking, and they deserve to lose. They got beat in that category, and it was not good enough for them.
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. Like they just got beat in this one, and yeah, I mean in terms of Aude, like I mean, again, I still have a little bit more faith in Aude in a sense. Like I think he'll still build up in this one, but I mean I do agree with you because it's like we did sign this player, on a U22 and things like that, and we want him to succeed, and you would kind of expect him to hit it right away. But at the same time, again, a 5 year deal, where it's going to be a process and things like that. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Aude. I still think again, like maybe towards the middle of the season, maybe he finds his groove and things like that. But this one was one of those performances that wasn't good. And you're right. Like in terms of these first 10 games, you could say there was more poor performances than good performances, right? Yeah. So there was that, and then the center backs again. Age issue is a big deal. I also forgot to mention this, but Martin Cáceres posted something pretty interesting on his story where it looks like he's like on a hospital bed in a gown and stuff. And like I don't know what that means, but like I mean I can even show it right here just real quick on the freaking thing.
I
Okay,
didn't
hold
see
on.
it
This
yet.
this is Martin Cáceres on his phone, like literally. Or my bad. Hold on, let me just. There you go. That's probably. Oh, that's the chat. Sorry. There you go. Martin Cáceres right there. It's kind of hard to see because it's like blurry or
Yeah, it
whatever.
is hard to see.
But point is, he's on like a hospital bed right there. That's very concerning. That was posted like a couple hours ago, which is very concerning.
I did
Considering
not
that
see it.
I mean I forgot to mention it, but like I saw it right before we recorded too. But it was just like that's still very concerning about Martin Cáceres. Of course, we'll wait to see what that's all about. But even then, like yeah, obviously that's very concerning. The fact that these past 2 weeks he's had to ask to come out and things like that, and so that's again concerning. Again, you still got the young players that are going to come in, but still though, Martin Cáceres, like I don't know, just wasn't there the whole way. And again, Maya Yoshida, didn't play his best games as a captain, and then like you said, Mickey Amane and McCarthy, they were okay, and for McCarthy, it's like what could you do? Like obviously, I think that was none of those goals were really on him or anything like that. It was just poor defensive play, right? So yeah, I mean, of course, there is I mean, defense was not good this weekend. Again, the only positive side, no set piece goals. So I guess you can say that was that's the only positive defensive side. But again, run of play, we got those 2 goals. So again, not a good day for the defense.
I'll say this though, isn't it so frustrating the center back situation next to Maya Yoshida? Because if I was Maya Yoshida, the captain of this team and an experienced center back, having a different partner every single week would just get so incredibly frustrating at a certain point. Like he has Caceres one week, then off the second half he has Jalen Neal, then he has Zavaleta, then Carlos Garces is coming in. It's just very up in the air, very inconsistent, and you can't really trust any of these guys. Like I said, we really need Garces to hit, and quite honestly, I think we need him to be the guy. Like I said before, I've explained many different reasons. I'll go through it quickly again in case anyone maybe forgot. Costas is just too old. You can't really rely on him anymore. You just saw him in the hospital too, so we don't know what that's like. Zavaleta, where he has stepped up this season, maybe sometimes just not a dependable enough player to play. And Jalen Neal, like, coming off a really season injury. Sorry, I can't edit that part out.
Yeah.
Jalen Neal coming off a very serious injury last season, coming into the team again, trying to find his form, hasn't really played a lot over the last, 10 months, and he's still coming into his form overall. And I don't know, like, I'm just not ready to buy into Jalen Neal yet either. I know a lot of people are very high on him, but I'm not really ready to sit here and say he's an MLS starting caliber center back right now. Like, he's a young player. He can definitely develop into that, which is kind of the point I was making earlier with talking about our academy a little bit. And some of those guys like Cuevas and Neal, like, yeah, I think they have potential for sure, but are they an MLS caliber starting center back right now? I don't know, because last year you could argue Jalen Neal was one of our better players, and I do agree to start that season, but let's be honest, look who he was around. He was around Efrain Alvarez, Memo Rodriguez, Raheem Edwards, Chris Mavinga, Koulibaly, Jonathan Bond, Joveljic, and Chicharito with the way they were playing. Like, yeah, he was one of our better players, but what is that really saying? And the sample size was so small, too. It was just like a 2 or 3 month sample size. And I do agree, Neal has potential. Obviously, he made the Gold Cup roster really good for him. But is he really ready to just be the guy and coming in? I don't know. Carlos Garces, I think we really need him to be good. He played in the Libertadores. He played in the Colombian youth national team, which playing in South America is obviously very difficult. He spent some time over in Portugal, which is good for his experience. From the footage I saw, he looks like a really good passer. Maybe he looks a little more developed than Jalen Neal. I think he's like 2 or 3 years older too, which is really good. So I think Carlos Garces maybe has to be the guy once he's in. Jalen Neal could be a great first option to come in. Then maybe next season, if Yoshida's gone, Neal, gets a little healthier this offseason, gets fit this season. Maybe that can be a duo next season. I don't know, but I just feel like Garces is more important than I think people are giving him credit for, and I think we really need him to be good to figure out sort of that inconsistency in our defense.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And of course, I mean, for Jalen Neal, like, again, potential still there. I just think that, you got to have to slowly get his way in there. I understand that, some people want to throw him into the fire, and sometimes throwing players into the fires could help them, but I don't think that's necessarily the right situation you can do, right? It's not always the best situation, but I mean, at the same time, like, yeah, I mean, of course, it's concerning in a sense for those center backs again for Garces. Like, I mean, I'm assuming that's why you brought him, right? To be essentially the guy, or like at least the guy at some point, because again, you have two aging center backs, and again, for Maya Yoshida, he's probably a little frustrated that he doesn't have a single partner every time. Although I will say it's a lot better this season than it was last season, right? Like, I mean, at least he's played with Martin Cáceres consistently, had a couple games with Zavaleta, and then he had the emergency game with Cerrillo. But like, at least he's had a little bit more consistency this season. But I mean, compared to last season, he had a partner every week, almost every 2 weeks or whatever was the case, right? So I mean, at least I'll say that for Yoshida, but still though, you're gonna have to find some guy who's gonna be consistently there with him, and even then, he's gonna have to have somebody who goes in for him whenever he needs the time off, right? Whenever he doesn't feel like he has the legs to go for a midweek game or anything like that, or he gets injured or anything of that nature, right? So there's going to be a lot of things to be questioned. Again, I for Jalen Neal, I mean, I know a lot of people like Jalen Neal, and we even had some people a couple weeks ago saying like, oh, you guys are talking bad on Jalen Neal. It's like, listen, I'm a big Jalen Neal fan. Like, I really wish he's the guy, like the prodigal like guy from the academy, and like he does his best and everything, right? Like, I really do want him to succeed. I want every player to succeed, but I think there's just a certain aspect where you have to say, like, if you want to develop a player, you got to develop them the right way. And coming off of 2 serious injuries, if you want to say, because first it was the hernia, and then it was the ab injury or whatever that set him back. So it's like, again, you got to slowly build them back into it. But at least it's good that you got to see him play this weekend, right? Like, at least it's good. It's good that he's on the field and playing. So that's a really good sign, and hopefully he progresses well, and then we add more depth into that defense.
Weirdly enough, there's a lot of people that were not happy with Jalen Neal last week. I saw some people commenting, like, get Neal out. What is Neal doing? Like, I don't know why some people were on him like that. Like, the game was essentially already over at that point unless we got a goal in the game. And I just feel like he did okay last week. He didn't really stand out, but he didn't do too bad. But there's some people on the other side, talking negative, and it's kind of weird. Like, I think there's a lot of weird spectrum with Jalen Neal. Like, some people think, he should be a starter right away, and some people think he shouldn't even be on this roster. I'm like, he's a young player, a raw player with, a good amount of potential. Obviously, he's not going to be on Team USA if there's not potential there, but it's going to take time. He's a young player coming off an injury. getting acclimated into a new team, a new league. MLS is not an easy league to play in, so it's just going to take time naturally, and I think that's fine. Like it's fine if it takes time. But I just feel like right now it's like, yeah, I don't know. You can't really be anywhere too far on the spectrum at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And again, taking time, like that's a good thing, right? Like, it's not a bad thing. Again, throwing people into the fire isn't going to make them, great, like you don't expect people to just do things like that right away. And there's some players that do, but that's not always that's not the recipe to success, right? So, you got to do things, slowly and actually progress little by little. But, of course, hopefully he plays well. Hopefully he, stands out within, coming back into the first team and things like that. So hopefully he does well. Any other things you want to say about the defense?
Yeah, I'll say this. So obviously, you talked about some of the consistency this year has been a little bit better with Caceres and Yoshida, but my problem with that is I feel like Caceres was never a sustainable situation. Obviously, now it looks a lot worse because he got subbed out early the last two games. Now, apparently, according to your photo, he's in a hospital bed, which isn't good. But even then, I just didn't feel like it was a sustainable situation starting him. Like you consider the age factor a big problem. And then like his body was obviously going to wear down as the weeks went on. We're not even in midweek games yet. So starting a guy that old coming off a serious injury was never going to be sustainable. So I guess what I would ask you is, how much do you believe in Carlos Garces? Do you think he's coming in to be the guy? Do you think Will Kuntz made that transfer for a purpose? Do you think he made him in for depth? Like, why do you think he brought him in? Do you think he's capable of being the guy? Because I feel like with Neil too, like he has injury problems. I just feel like Garces has to be the guy. He's played at a high level national team, high level competitions like the Libertadores, second best international competition in the world. You have to have a lot of belief in Garces that hopefully he can be the consistent partner with Yoshida who's capable of going a full season, unlike we saw with Costas and maybe Neil just for this year, possibly.
I think in a sense, like, I mean, even think about the deal that they had with Gotchas, right? Like it was a loan and then they've switched it up to a full on deal, right? So,
Five
I mean,
years.
that's a sign where you have to have like good faith in him, right? And you have to hope that he's the guy. And I mean, look at it this way: like even like the way they started with Martin Cáceres, let's just say, I'm assuming they brought him in because obviously the sustainability factor, like you said, it's like, hey, listen, at some point Martin Cáceres is not going to be there all the time. Like again, age factor, him coming off a pretty big injury, like that's also that was a factor, right? And then you look at Jalen Neal, it's like, yes, he'll be back this season, but at the same time, like, what if he's not fully 100% at that point? So you gotta have to bring somebody in to be that guy. So I think when you look at everything that's transpired, like the deal, some of the players on our team, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think you're possibly and most likely you're gonna have to make him, the guy next to Yoshida, at least, looking at everything, right? But again, we have to see what he does on the field as well. Like obviously, they just gave him a 5-year deal, so hopefully that's a good sign of, that you have really good faith in this player. But at the same time, we got to see what he's doing. But I see why they did the deal. I mean, we even said it, like it wasn't a bad deal. It wasn't a bad move to make. So, that it was a very understandable deal, and we knew that that was going to be a necessity at some point. So, I mean, yeah, we just got to see what Garces does, and I'm assuming he's going to be the guy, and he's had good experience in his past team, and he's a young player, so I think yeah, I mean, hopefully we see him in that lineup. Who knows?
It's almost a good thing because he's a young player, but he also has a little bit of experience. I think he's 22 or 23 years old, but he also played over in Europe a little bit with a Portuguese team. I can't remember their name. It was their under 23 team. He's also played in the Libertadores before, which, I mean, any player can tell you that is an extremely tough competition to play in. Very high level teams, very high level of intensity. So I just feel like even as a young player, maybe something that he brings over Jalen Neal is he's a little more experienced in these high level games. Like obviously Jalen Neal's first big moment would probably be the Gold Cup for Team USA, and obviously he was injured, so he didn't even make that. But like, what else has Jalen Neal really played that really compares to that? Maybe, and he's gonna get there, right? He's a younger player than Garces is, but he needs a little bit more experience. And I will say for this season, having Jalen Neal as a first option off the bench, maybe to pair with Garces, maybe going forward, or if Yoshida needs a bit of a rest, he gets injured, like you talked about, is not a bad spot to be in right now. We're talking about some of our depth maybe being a little bit bad, and I do agree it's questionable. But at center backs, at least, once we get Garces in, which I mean, hopefully it's soon, right? It's been a couple of weeks, but you feel like at least at center backs, we're in a good spot going there, hopefully going forward. If Garces is a hit, and we need him to be a hit for this team to be more successful.
Yeah, hopefully. I think they're still working on his visa and things like that too, because I don't think I've ever heard him, already being in LA or already traveling at some point. So I'm assuming they're still working on that visa. And again, it's kind of weird because it's been a couple weeks already. Usually it doesn't take that long. But, I don't know. Maybe because I think they even said last week that he was supposed to come in last week. So I don't know what's happening there, but hopefully that gets resolved pretty soon. But yeah, of course, like again, in terms of center backs, I guess you're not too. Again, it's not an over concern yet, so it's like you still got some depth in there. So we'll see how Garces turns out, and I think he'll be good. Like I think hopefully he fits in with the team well. Yeah, but anyways, any other thoughts about the defense, or should we move on into the midfield now?
I'll do it.
All right, then let's move on into the midfield. So midfield, you got Gaston Brugman, you have Mark Delgado, and Ricky Puig, your same normal midfield. Of course, Ricky Puig ends up getting a yellow card, gets suspended for next game, so that's a big blow, which we'll talk about, in the preview and things like that. But of course, yeah, midfield. How'd you feel about it? What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, just not their day overall. I'm used to seeing a lot better from them. They were just, pretty poor, right? I think they got outworked. Like I talked about, the Galaxy lost every single aspect in the game. Physicality was definitely one of those two. They lost every 50-50 ball. It looks like they just weren't on their man at all. They weren't really tracking runners. On the other side of the ball, when they did have it, they didn't really make much of it. You could also blame that on the offense a little bit, but still, the midfield was just not very good. Brugman, kind of struggled to have an impact on the game. Delgado was turning over the ball a lot. Ricky Puig was largely ineffective too. And his fifth yellow card in 10 games is just so disappointing because I thought this to myself. How many of those 5 yellow cards were actually, soccer related fouls? Probably not many of them. Most of the yellow cards he picked up are just him getting in people's face. And you can kind of make the same point with Zavaleta too. Like, look, I get it. You're a competitor. That's a really good thing. But at a certain point, like, you're just kind of getting in the way of your own team. And at a certain point, you're actually hurting your team now. Like with Zavaleta trying to make a game-saving sort of play to prevent a goal, and Ricky Puig trying to get everyone fired up, bring a lot of energy. Well, it's now we're playing with 10 men for 20 minutes against San Jose, and now we're without our best player coming off a loss, going into a very tough game that's going to be against Seattle. So it's just so disappointing to see him get those yellow cards. It's even more disappointing because it also happened last season too. Like I remember, I think we played Austin the week before, he got a yellow card, and then we were playing Orlando, and then we lost 2-0 coming off our first win of the season. And maybe if we had Ricky Puig, I'm not saying we would have won, but maybe it could have been better. I don't know. It's just like to get 5 yellow cards in 10 games when, let's be honest, you're not even playing much defense anyways. It's just very disappointing. Sort of just immaturity too. Like I don't know why he's getting these yellow cards just for getting in people's face, but he can't do anything about it now. He's going to be gone. But overall, if we're just talking about the midfield, they were second best all game easily.
Yeah, I mean midfield again. I talked about the turnovers. I mean, so many turnovers, and it wasn't just the midfield. It was also part of the offense too. It's like the amount of turnovers that not that we gave up turnovers, but the fact that how many turnovers Austin created in this game, and like you said, we just got outworked, outbodied in this game. And in terms of the Ricky Puig yellow cards, I don't even think you compared it to Zavaleta. I don't even think that's a good comparison. I think you compare it to Martin Cáceres. How many yellow cards even in this game? How many yellow cards has Martin Cáceres had for the same reason, where it's just talking or nothing soccer related or on the field, right? It's like he's had a lot of yellow cards where he's talking back to the ref or he's talking to players and things like that. So it's like, and again, I understand it means you're a competitor, it means you're fiery, and you need that fiery and competitiveness on your team, right? But at the same time, it's like at some point it does hurt you. And yeah, I mean, five yellow cards within the first 10 games is kind of crazy. Like I don't even think, like, is that even the first player in the league already to have that, to have five yellow cards already this early? Like it seems like not that many players have already gotten that.
I mean, I'm not even sure, but the thing that's disappointing about it is if he was getting 5 yellow cards doing like Mark Delgado or Gaston Brugman's defensive work, tackling and winning the ball back, it's like, okay, maybe fair enough, but he's not playing any defense. He's getting these yellow cards for just antics, basically, and that's the disappointing part about it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And again, it's like, it's pretty crazy to think 5 already in the first 10 games. And, you can't even think about anybody else already within any team who's already had 5 yellow cards already. So again, I guess that's also an issue. And again, this is something that people are going to, bring down on Ricky Puig. But of course, like, again, there's always the good side of Ricky Puig and the bad side of Ricky Puig. Of course, we know how great of a player he is, but people are going to use this to be like, oh, this is why Ricky's not a good player. It's like, yes, Ricky has flaws. This is probably one of them. But, of course, he's got to figure that out, once he comes back from suspension, because, again, he's the most important player on the team, and he's got to, be on the field in order to get, like, I guess, our full potential of the team, right? Like the team is built around him, and so hope again we can't do anything now, but that it is very disappointing. And again, in terms of the midfield in general, it was very, again wasn't a good day for them, and we just got outworked in that part of the field. So it is what it is, right?
I mean, look, I respect the fact Ricky Pooch is a competitor. I really like that on our team. I think a lot of Galaxy players in the past have kind of lacked that a little bit in a sense. We always talked about they played kind of flat and kind of just for a check. But at a certain point, it's like you can't be getting suspended, 10 games into the season, getting 5 yellow cards. Like that can't be happening at all. And it's just like you have to find that balance between being a competitor, but also being able to make sure you're available for your team as many times as possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I don't even look at it as just like the fact that you're getting yellow cards. It's the fact that that hurts your availability and how important you are to this team. Like, and again, we should talk about depth and Ricky Puig. Like after that, like who's going to be the guy who steps up? Like it's like it's not a player that it's worth missing out for a game. Like definitely Ricky needs to be play as many games as he can, and and if it's not even through injury or even a foul or anything that actually was part of the game, like then that can't happen. So of course, I mean, again, I'm pretty sure Ricky's got to knows that, and he's gonna figure it out at some point. But I mean, I think hopefully this is kind of a little bit of like a wake up, like hey, I got to control the temper down a little bit, still keep the competitiveness on your side, but not to the point where you're hurting your team.
I mean, it also happened last season though, so did he really learn from it? I don't know. Probably
Well,
not.
well, well, yeah. I mean, I guess you're right on that. Like maybe he hasn't learned from it yet. But again, he's also still a young player. People forget that as well. He's still a young player, and he's gonna have that fiery side of him, right? So
Which we
you
like
know,
too.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. We like it. Like I don't think this is something that people. Well, at least for us, is we're not going to be like, oh, he's got to stop with that. It's like, no, it's just like tone it down a little bit to the point where you're not, getting suspended with, at some point within the season, right? So again, keep the fieriness, but at the same time, you got to learn how to keep your temper.
I mean, yeah, that competitiveness is more than a lot of Galaxy players have shown in the past, which is the reason why I really like it a lot. It means he cares at least. So I mean, there's that, but still.
Yeah, and it's a good temperness, like it's not Douglas Costa fighting for no random
Oh
reason, right?
yeah,
Like on a, it's not that type of fieriness either, right? Like it's a fieriness that still brings into some positivity, but this one was kind of backfired on him, right? So again, it's got to tone it down a little bit, but we'll see. Again, not saying that he should stop with that, but just got to find your limits, right?
hmm
Yeah. But anyways, anything else about the midfield, or should we move into the offense?
No, easily second best on the day, and yeah, I'm used to the midfield being a lot better. I'm sure they know they have to be better, but hopefully they can pick it up because that day they were just not good enough.
Yeah, definitely. Again, not their day. Hopefully that turns it around. Which again, that's another thing for the Galaxy before we move on. Like it'll be interesting to see how they react. Because again, that's another thing too. Like how do you react after a loss, right? But that also be interesting to see how the Galaxy do going into this weekend. But I guess that should have been for the preview. But anyways, let's talk about the offense now. Of course, offense. You had you have no Dejan Joveljic in this one because he had a thigh injury, which was something that we didn't expect. It happened the day before, and finding it out and everything like that. So we thought he was going to go into this game. He doesn't go into this game. So of course, you had Gabriel Peck, you had Joseph Paint still, and your striker was Miguel Berry, which again, no goals on the day. Offense struggled very, very much so in this game. But how did you feel about it? What were your thoughts about the offense?
Yeah, obviously the offense was very poor on the day, starting with Gabriel Peck. He's had a very good month of April. Obviously, one player of the month in April. We've talked about it through the many weeks. He's been playing very well, put in a lot of very good performances. This definitely wasn't one of them. Gabriel Peck played very poor, took a lot of very poor shots, made a lot of very poor decisions offensively. Again, similar to the midfield, he turned the ball over a lot, which is definitely not good. Joseph Pencil, I think, was the one sort of bright spot for the Galaxy. He looked like he was trying to get involved. But then again, just like I don't know. He kind of struggled too a little bit. Again, you got to give credit to Austin. They did really good defending us. They just did a really good job with their physicality, with their shape. Something we haven't seen from Austin, honestly. Like I was very surprised by that. They had a very good shape. They were very organized, which is something they weren't doing in the past. So you got to give credit to them on that day. And then I guess the elephant in the room that everybody has been talking about, Miguel Berry, just extremely poor overall. Just very rough, honestly, just hurting the team. He was not good at all. And I think, Greg Vanney made a great substitution at halftime, bringing in Diego Fagundes, putting him out wide, then moving Joseph Paintel to the 9. That was really good. I thought we might have got back into the game at then. I thought maybe we could have found a goal, try to get a point from the game, maybe even three if it goes really well. But it still didn't happen for us. For Miguel Berry, I mean, it's tough to watch. And honestly, I think it's unfair for him because we're asking him to play a role that he should not be playing. It's kind of like Zubac in 2021 a little bit, where you knew this guy was not really an MLS caliber player. You had him as a backup spot anyways. He struggled, kind of predictable. And then eventually in the summertime, you got Dan Jovic. I think it got a lot better, especially the next season. That's why I still do have that level of confidence. So, like, if Chris Klein and Jovan Karofsky can figure out that we needed a backup striker, I'm sure Will Coots and Greg Vanek can figure out that we're going to need a backup striker come the summertime. So I guess the question is now, just for the next, 3 months, can we last with Miguel Berry as our backup? And honestly, it's like, I don't know. It's not looking good for him at all. It's not looking good for us with him there. I mean, it's not even that Miguel Berry is just getting unlucky. Like, right now, he just looks totally far off from even an MLS level player. I think the only reason he's getting contracts in the league is because of his 2021 season with Columbus, where he had, sort of you could say a breakout season in the league. But still, I mean, 4 goals in his last 80 games. You saw the way he was kind of hurting the offense. He couldn't really do anything right, you could say. And yeah, it was hard to watch, honestly. And I think it's unfair for him. It's going to be interesting in the summertime to see. Hopefully, we bring in somebody in and they do a lot better because Miguel Berry is just not going to hold it down for us. It's just that simple. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about him because it's pretty obvious at this point.
Yeah, I mean, again, I talked about it like last week. Like, there's always one thing that we talk about consistently every week, like within a season, right? And Miguel Berry's this season, right?
Who was
So
it
it's
last
like,
season? I'm just thinking about that. Who was it last season?
I'm
Probably
trying
everybody.
to, I'm trying to think who was last season. Like, we've always had something that we talked about. Like, it wasn't Douglas.
Changed.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say it wasn't Douglas Costa because he ended up having a little bit of resurgence, and then I don't know if it was the
It started with
defense.
him, though. It started with Douglas Costa. Then it
It
maybe
started
went
with
to Mavinga. Then, I don't know. Maybe Uri Rosella ended off there. I remember we were talking about him a lot.
I think it was Mavinga actually. I think he was the main guy because I mean he consistently just wasn't there the whole fucking season. So it's
Edwards
like
sometimes. Bond,
Ed
maybe.
Bond, yeah. I think yeah. That was a lot of people we talked about every week. Huh?
Obviously, before it was Cabral when we did the pockets, it was always Cabral. But then when he got traded, it's kind of interesting. It changed a lot.
Yeah, I know. Like Cabral was that point, and then and hell, even it kind of, I guess it kind of changed this. Or I mean, even then, we have two topics, right? We have the set pieces that we talked about consistently every week, and then now it's
It's not a
Miguel
player,
Berry.
though.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying like there was always an issue that we had that we talked about consistently every week. But I mean, I guess player wise, yes, this year is Miguel Berry. Yeah, I mean, I feel like last year it changed. It was Douglas Costa. Maybe Mavinga was the most consistent of the bad last season. So
Edwards,
uh,
too. I didn't like Edwards. Bond wasn't very good.
Edwards at one point, played good and then went back to, not playing as well. Bond, I guess, was one of them as well. But, I guess just in general, the defense last year was consistently the issue, right? But anyways, the point is, we kind
Jovic,
of
too.
got
Definitely Jovic. Gotta mention
there.
Jovic.
I was gonna say Jovic probably was definitely the one that we talked about the most for sure.
Him and Mavinga, definitely 1 and 2.
Him, yeah, definitely. I think that because the defense was kind of more just the whole, right? It wasn't just one player. But anyways, point is, we kind of got sidetracked there a little bit. But I mean,
Everybody, seriously, everybody, right? It was everybody.
it was not a good season last
Memo
year. I mean,
Rodriguez,
seriously.
too. Memo Rodriguez.
Memo Rodriguez, when they tried playing him at winger, like, yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of players that we talked
Just
about.
in the whole team, honestly.
Yeah, it was just the whole team. We know how bad of a season it was last year, so yeah, pretty bad.
One to forget.
But, yeah, one to definitely forget, and we kind of did forget a little bit right there. But again, sidetracking, and all that stuff. Like back to Miguel Berry, it's just like I mean, you can tell like he's just not the guy. And again, I know I kind of say like, oh, he gives the effort and things like that, which I still, again, believe in that stuff, right? And you mentioned it's like it is unfair because it's just like, Miguel Berry is just playing up a tall task right now. It's just being that second guy. And I think there was one thing again that we kind of, I guess, with Dejan kind of getting spoiled in the beginning was just that, when we had Chicharito, you had your main guy, and then you had Dejan Jovic coming off the bench, and you're like, God damn, like, I guess we kind of got spoiled with, like, being consistent with that. But, like, and again, for Miguel Berry, he's going to have to be that guy, I guess, in a sense, being the guy who steps up even when in these situations, whether Dejan's not playing or maybe he doesn't have a good game. It's like he has to be that guy who steps up, right? So, it is a little unfair, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's just like he's just not. Again, I've mentioned it before when he's played. It's just like he looks a little bit lost there. It looks like he's out of the game and just not with the tempo and everything like that. So of course, like Miguel Berry is just like, again, not his fault, but at the same time, it's just like you gotta step up in a sense. Like you gotta find your way. And again, he's built like if you were to look at Miguel Berry, you would probably sit and look at this guy without knowing his stats. You're probably like, damn, this guy's probably a really good soccer player. Like he's tall, he's a big body, probably scores a lot of goals and things like that. And it's just like, and then you look at his stats, and it's just like, oh, it's not all there. And again, I guess that was kind of a shot to Miguel Berry physically, which I guess that's kind of fucked up. But still, regardless, it's like because again, hey, he's better looking than me, so like not gonna deny that. But again, when it comes to his playing, at least it's just not there. And then when you look at the wingers, yes, like I think again you got to look at the Austin's defense, how they shut down Gabriel Peck, how they shut down Paintstill in a sense. And yeah, like once Fagundes came in, that's kind of where the offense started clicking a little bit. Maybe you had a little bit of hope, but at the same time, it just wasn't enough because Austin at that point was just playing very good defense the entire game. So it's like, yeah, I mean, again, credit to Austin for shutting down this offense and an offense that's been scoring a lot of goals, even if you don't have some certain players. So it's like, again, like I can credit to them. And again, this just wasn't a day for the offense, and they got, I guess you could say they kind of got outworked in this one too.
Look, let's just put it simply for Miguel Berry. For me, he's just that category of player that's like Zubac or Judd, basically. But what the Galaxy need right now in times like these and going forward for the rest of the season is 2022 Joveljic or 2023 Billy Sharp. That's the caliber of player we need as our backup. Not one of these like other guys that like, yes, they can put in the effort. And no, it's not their fault if they're being asked to play in a role that maybe they're just not capable of playing in. And that's fine if they can't play that role. But we got to understand our roles on the team. And we need to bring in somebody who can play that role for us because that's how you build a successful team going through an entire MLS season using your depth to play in many different games that are going to come up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and that's an interesting question though. It's like how do you approach that second striker position? Do you get a young player that's going to be like a 2021 Dejan Joveljic, or do you get someone like a Billy Sharp who is a lot more of a veteran, but can give you at least a good half season and will get you that production, right? So it's like it'd be interesting to see how the Galaxy go about with the team and how and what they do with that. But yeah, I mean, of course, like and again, I always say like I was not, I guess, high on Preston Judd, but at least I was kind of like, well, Preston Judd kind of gave you a little bit of production, so it's like even if he was still here, like I think I'd probably be a little bit more confident with him as the second striker than Miguel Berry at this point, and we'll see.
Yeah, as for that route, I'd go with the striker situation. I'd definitely go like probably a little bit in the middle, right? Like we have a Max Tam contract spot open and you can get a really good player with that spot. I'd probably try to get someone like 28, 29 years old who can come in and do a really good job and be capable of starting a lot of games too. Like I don't want another young player because we have Joveljic there. Fit-wise, that wouldn't really make much sense. I don't really want an old player like a Yoshida, a Costas, or a Billy Sharp who's just going to leave after 1 or 2 seasons because, well, then the same problem's going to come up again. I want it to be someone who can come in, be really good, maybe play in a two-striker system sometimes like we used to do in 2022. Obviously, that gave us a lot of options. We saw Joveljic can be successful in that position too. Just someone we can play next to, play off of, come off the bench, be very impactful too. That's the route we need to go. And we have the contract and salary situation to make that work. It's just a matter of getting our guy. And hopefully we get that in the summertime because like many people have talked about, in the summertime, better players definitely become available.
I was going to say, isn't Miguel Berry like 26? So it's like, I mean, essentially you just want somebody who's like, I guess, kind of like Miguel Berry, but actually scores goals.
But better, yeah.
Yeah, but better. Yeah. And another thing, have we even seen him play in a two-striker formation? I don't think we've ever really done that so far this season.
Miguel Berry?
Yeah, like have we played him next to Joveljic? I don't
No,
think
we have
this
not.
season.
No, but I want to get a striker who we can maybe play like that, and it would work a lot better. Like we saw Chicharito and Joveljic. That worked out super well.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just saying, like I don't think we've ever seen him. Like who knows how that would work out? But then again, maybe it wouldn't be that much of a difference if he had somebody next to him. But yeah, I mean, definitely for sure, that's going to be like we always say, there's going to be a topic of conversation once that window comes up. And yeah, it'll be interesting what they do. But again, I think the Galaxy will find their options, and I'm pretty sure Will Kuntz is going to find out who that guy is in a sense. I always kind of feel like, and again, I don't really feel like, I feel like it's kind of talking down on Miguel Berry. And again, I want him to succeed. I want him to be the player that, has, just has production, right? Like I just want to have production, things like that, right? He's a Galaxy player. But at the same time, like I feel like Miguel Berry was just kind of that player to back up. So, Dejan doesn't really have that much pressure on him to I guess to, because like I said, like when you brought Billy Sharp last year, it kind of was a sign of like, all right, Dejan, you're not playing good. We're going to bring this guy in. And, obviously he had his frustrations with that, almost, signed with another team, if you remember that as well. So I felt like Miguel Berry was that guy was like, hey, like, listen, we're just bringing this guy in, but you're going to be the guy. We're going to have complete trust in you, but this guy's not really going to be the guy to like take your job, type of deal, right? So I feel like that's kind of what Miguel Berry role was. But at that point, it's like, I guess like in the summer window, that's where you got to find your actual second, your second striker.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for Jovic if he can establish himself as the starting striker. And so far, he's done a really good job. We got to see how he looks like coming of his injury once he comes back. But still, like, I think you do need depth. You do need some more options. You do need a guy who can play next to Jovic. You need a good fit for this team. And I'm sure Jovic will understand too, like, hey, we need options on this team. We need depth on this team. It's a long season. There's many games. It's not even going to be like a, sort of an insult. It's just going to be like, hey, we're trying to boost up the roster a little bit. We have an opportunity to bring a really good guy in who can bring more quality, offensive quality on the field. And I think that's a really good route to go. What I would say is like in terms of Miguel Berry, I would just kind of ask for Kuntz not even as a criticism, but just in general, like you couldn't bring in maybe someone a little bit more better or a little bit more threatening. Like let's say your mindset was to maybe aim bigger in the summertime and get like a really good caliber player in the summer. That's fair. Like I said, good players become available in the summertime, but. Damir Kralak was a free agent. Corey Burke was a free agent. Fafa Pico was a free agent. Joseph Martinez was a free agent. Are you telling me you couldn't bring one of those guys to LA maybe and have him as the backup striker at least for the first half of the season? I mean, it still would have been a lot better, and I don't think that would have really shown Jovic much because these guys are aging players too, and they're not really coming in to be the guy. But I just feel like you could have brought in someone a little bit more of a higher quality, but you said, oh, Miguel Berry off waivers. We're going to have to live with that till the summertime, obviously, because the window's not open. But still, I feel like we could have done maybe at least a little more when I threw out some of those names. You could have sent someone a little bit better.
I would say though, in terms of those names though, like I mean, but how many of those guys could still be like starters in this league? Like I feel like they still can be. Like yeah, sure, they might be up in the age and they might be on the tail ends of the career, but they can still right now at least still be a starter, right? Like I think like those
But they're
guys
not
like the
starters.
well, I mean, still though, like I mean, going into the season, maybe you had that like mindset, right? Like how many of those guys could still be starters, right? So it's just like I think that's also another situation as well. And so yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, but again, if those guys are not starters now, like maybe those become options within the summer window, right? Like, but maybe that might be an option, later on. And again, who knows? Maybe that'll be the case, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I think, going with Miguel Berry necessarily wasn't just, yeah, it was just, it does question it a little bit. It's like, was this really the best option? Maybe, again, was it contract wise? Was it just the player availability wise? It's like, I don't know. It's like, again, but we're not the GM. Will Kuntz is. So, like, I guess those are his decisions to make. But, again, and again, I don't want to talk down to Miguel Berry. I hope he, finds his way. Hopefully he shows some, progression with us. But, hopefully he finds his way, I guess.
Two things. One, Miguel Berry is probably not watching this, so I think it's fine. And two, we got to be honest here. I mean, if he's not performing well and up to MLS standards, we got to say, like, hey, he's not performing well up to the standards of this league. Right now, he just doesn't look like an MLS caliber player. And that's the truth of it watching it.
No, 100% agree. Like I'm not disagreeing on that. I'm just saying, like, hopefully, he finds his way. Like I'm just that's all I'm saying. Like
Yeah, definitely.
he's a player on our team. At the end of the day, we got to support him. Even when Kevin Cabral had his bad chances, I even said like, hey, hopefully he finds his way. Hopefully, he does good with us. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But that at some point you just gotta keep supporting your players in some sort of way. Not saying like he's you got to be like, oh, he's playing good. Like of course he's not playing good, or he's not playing the standard we expect him to play. So it's like we still got to give him the criticism, but at the same time, you know. At the same time, hopefully he does well. And who knows, maybe he is listening. We never know. I don't think any player really listens to our show. But if they do, like, I guess thank you and hi, I guess in a sense. But I don't know. Well, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's watching it. But anyways, that was the offense. I guess we'll talk about the subs a little bit. Anything about the subs that you thought was interesting, or anything that, I mean, really, I don't think the only one that was really kind of impactful was just Diego Fagundes coming in. But anybody else that kind of stood out to you in the subs?
Yeah, even Dio Fagundez, I don't think was that impactful in the match. I don't think he really, made much of a difference. But yeah, you could argue it was the right sub to make at least. But I thought it was kind of funny. We subbed on three defenders when we were down two goals. It just kind of speaks to the limitations of our depth, our offensive depth. I thought Johnny Perez kind of looked a bit solid when he came on. I like the way he played. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets more minutes going forward because every time he's on the field for the Galaxy, he always looks like he belongs. He looks pretty solid. But other than that, like three defensive subs when we're down two goals. We subbed on Jalen Neal, Cuevas, and Sadio, defensive minded player. So I was just like, that was kind of weird. But other than that, it's like we don't have many options right now. So what more can you really do?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, Yeah, I mean the subs weren't. At least the subs didn't lose you the game. I guess, or it wasn't worse than what it was once you sub them on. So I guess that's a positive. But really, none of them really that had that much of an impact. I guess going into the game. So it is what it is. But yeah, the subs were okay. Um, but anyways, yeah, I think you have any more thoughts about the game in general? Any other thoughts that you want to say before we move on?
Yeah, I have one more thing though. I don't know what you thought about it, but when we made that Joseph Panto to the nine sort of switch, I really liked that at first. And for the first 5 minutes, it actually looked really good. But then for whatever reason, Joseph Panto just decided, like, I'm done with this. I'm gonna go wherever I want. I'm just like, yo, you can't do that because now it's like we're playing the entire second half without a number nine, and then he was all over the field. Obviously, I think a lot of it was just frustration in the game. He's just trying to get on the ball. We talk about that with some of our DPs. If you want to, I guess, knock them a little bit, maybe they can get a little too ball hungry, try to, make too many things happen. But I just felt like Joseph Pants was sort of trying to stay in position a little more rather than just wandering around the field. And then it just kind of affected the team and the shape overall with us and made it easier to defend in a sense. And I felt like it was the right sub to make, but it was not executed properly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it was the right sub and the right thing to do because at the end of the day, it's just like, it wasn't working well with Miguel Berry. So it's just like, yeah, it kind of made sense to move Joseph Paintstone there as your center forward. And yeah, I mean, again, he didn't really, again, you like you said, probably frustration, probably not used to playing the number nine role in general. So it's just like, maybe he just wasn't
Well, he's
full.
done it before.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying like that's not his main thing, right? So it's like maybe who knows if he's really had that much success. Again, I guess I haven't really watched too much tape on him before the Galaxy, but at the same time, it's just like maybe just again frustration and probably wasn't his main role or his probably not used to it as much. So it's just like I don't know. I think it was the right decision, but yeah, like I said, probably wasn't executed as well. But again, that wasn't necessarily Vanny's fault. It was maybe just more of just how the players felt at that point.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's how they roll with it on Saturday or Sunday, excuse me, against Seattle when if Joveljic isn't playing again. But again, we'll see if he does play or not. But yeah, I mean, but anyways, I think that'll do for the I guess the recap of Austin. Again, wasn't the Galaxy's day, and like I mentioned earlier, even though Chris Mavinga's not on the team, I think he said it best. It's like we know that this team could play better. Obviously we've seen them play better. And again, that's only the second loss of the season. Like, I mean, if you were tell us like, before the season started, like we wouldn't have expected just two losses at this point. We probably expected a little more, maybe maybe a couple more ties in there, but we haven't. So it's just like, at least at that point, there's something still to build off of, something to still be positive about. But, again, in terms of this game, just wasn't their day, Yeah. But anyways, so let's move on then, I guess. Galaxy News. I don't really think I have anything from the Galaxy News side perspective. I don't know how Ventura County did this week. I know you kind of watched their games here and there, so I don't know if they played this weekend and how they did.
Oh, yeah, they won in Austin in a penalty shootout, and they scored at the 90th minute to equalize the game.
Oh, so there you go. Oh yeah, actually I did see that. Actually, I did see the score that they tied. So that's a pretty good thing for Ventura County. I'm trying to think of anything other Galaxy News related that happened. I mean, I guess I know we already talked about it, but Ricky Pooch isn't going to be available for this game, so that I guess was some Galaxy News there. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really anything else for the Galaxy News. I wasn't prepared for that segment, I guess, at all. So, but yeah, I mean, in terms of Ventura County, good job that they tied last minute. But anyways, I guess we can move on into our preview, unless you had anything that I forgot to mention.
No, I don't think you had to be prepared for the Galaxy News because I really don't think there really was any.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I don't think there really was anything, that to talk about, I guess, but I don't know. But anyways, we'll probably get more news this week anyway. So let's just go into the preview against the Seattle Sounders. So we're going to Seattle this weekend. We know how the Pacific Northwest has treated us in recent years. Hasn't been the best for the Galaxy, but again, we did also beat Seattle last time we played them, and so at least that gives you a little bit more hope going up against Seattle. But at the same time, no Ricky Pooch in this game, maybe no Dejan Joveljic in this game, so that's going to be a factor going in against Seattle. But how do you feel about Seattle? What are your thoughts about going up against them this weekend?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's not looking good for the Galaxy at all. It's not looking very good for us. Obviously, Seattle's a team we really struggle against. They're very good still. Like even despite the record, I still think it's a team. You look at them. I think they're a good team. I think they have good players. They have a good system. They just got a massive result yesterday in Philadelphia. They won 3-2, that's a very hard place to play. Philadelphia is one of the best home teams in the league. So they're going to come in confident. The Galaxy are going in with a lot of doubts, a lot of question marks, defensively, offensively. There's a lot of concerns to be had. Obviously, we have a lot of players out. We have Ricky Pooch out for sure. I'm 95% sure Jovic is going to be out. And honestly, I do think he should be out. I don't think he should play with a hip injury week to week. Like, if Ricky Pooch is already not going to play, it's like, why would you play Jovic? You're coming home next week. I say maybe make the Salt Lake game more of a put your eggs in the basket type of game. You get Jovic back, you get Ricky back. Hopefully, you finally get Garces available and into the team. I think that's a game you're going to put more emphasis on. But for Seattle, I would just say just any result would be a good result. It's going to be a very tough place to play, a team we haven't done very well against. We talk about matchups too. I think Seattle matches up very well against us. Even in that 1-0 win, I feel like Seattle should have found a few goals in the game. Maybe could have won, could have at least tied for sure. It's a team that we don't match up very well against. They're coming off a good result. We're coming off a bad result going to their place. It's not looking good without Ricky Pooch. It was already a hard game with him. Without him, it just makes it that much harder. Honestly, I hate to say it, but I'm expecting a loss. Honestly, I'm expecting this to be the Galaxy's second straight loss with us asking a lot of questions coming home next week.
Yeah, I mean, definitely this is going to be a very tough game going up against Seattle. And again, yeah, I'm glad that we beat them last time, but at the same time, it's like now it's got to be consistently, right? It's like this can't just be a one-off game and expect oh yeah, we're good, we played well against Seattle now. It's like no, we got to do it consistently, and now in Seattle because that's always going to be a big trouble. And in terms of Jovic, like I agree, like I don't think you should play him, and not only just because of the hip injury, but also let's say if he was okay to go for this game, it's like you're still also playing on turf. Like, do you want some guy coming off an injury playing on turf? Probably not. Like I wouldn't want that. So I think that also plays a very big factor going into that game. So and again, no Ricky Pooch, that makes it difficult as well. In terms of Seattle, you at one point you did have Stephen Fry and Alex Roldan out for them going into this game, but now Stephen Fry got his red card reinstated, so now he's available for Sunday, and then but Alex Rodon is now out for Seattle for that game. So again another key player for Seattle out. So I mean. Again, you probably would have had a little bit more hope with both of those guys being out, but at the same time, it's like, you never know. I mean, Seattle finds a way. They still have a really good coach in, Brian Schmetzer. So it's like, yeah, I mean, in terms of this weekend, it's like, yeah, I kind of agree. It's like any result would be pretty massive this weekend. But I mean, a loss is it wouldn't be surprising, right? It wouldn't be shocking. And again, I don't think it'd be a bad thing to also look at, RSL as like the main priority because you're going to be back home. RSL is on fire. If you beat that team, I think that seems more, that gives you more of a, I guess that makes a little bit more of a statement on the Galaxy and how they are if you beat RSL. But again, that's when that happens, I guess. But still though, like in terms of this week, I think any result would be nice for this team. But I don't know. Like it's going to be a difficult one going up against Seattle, in Seattle especially.
I mean, look, we have so many question marks going into this week all across the field. We can go through some of them. Like Julian Alde is hit and miss every single week. Who are we going to pair next to Yoshida? And honestly, when you go through it, like I'm not starting Jalen Neal on turf coming off two major injuries. Like I'm not going to do that. No way I'm starting Cáceres. It looks like Garces is not going to be available. So the only guy, unfortunately, people aren't going to want to hear this, but I think Zavaleta has to start. Like Zavaleta, let's give him credit. As a starter this year, he started 2 games versus Kansas City and Seattle. He's played well as a starter, so maybe as a starter, he's a little bit more switched on, and we got to hope for that again. He doesn't make a mental error or switch off. Maybe that can happen again. So I think you could go with Zavaleta. McCarthy has been letting goals left, right. I mean, that's not very good. Midfield is coming off a pretty bad performance. You got to see them pick it up. And then with no Ricky Pooch, I mean, who are you going to replace him with? Honestly, I'd go with Diego Fagundes. He did play a lot of 10 with New England. And, it would make sense to put him back in that spot. Maybe he could do good. And then at winger position, honestly, again, your only option is really Johnny Perez. Who else are you really going to play there? I'd start Jonathan Perez, honestly. He's always shown signs of promise with the Galaxy. And if you're going into this game kind of saying, like, it's not the priority anyways, like, why not give this guy a chance maybe to go out there and prove himself? Obviously, he's going to be very motivated, so maybe give him a chance. I'd go with Paintsel at the 9 again, maybe ask him to be a little more stationary in that position instead of wandering around the field. You got to go with Paintsel again after the way Miguel Berry played against Austin and Seattle last time and just the whole season. You cannot go with Miguel Berry again. I'm sorry. He should not be starting again. And obviously, you go with Peck. You're going to need to see a better performance from him. If Ricky Pooch gone, he's our second best DP. You need to see him step up a lot. But overall, a lot of question marks, a lot of players in different positions. We're away from home. Seattle is playing well. Seattle's still a really good defense. We're lacking offensively. Defensively, we're shaking. So when I look at it, unfortunately, I see nothing but a loss. I see nothing but a loss for us. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be 2 or 3 goal loss. That's all I can see, honestly, when I'm being realistic about it. I'm being logical about it. I see nothing but a loss for the Galaxy. If they can get a tie, I don't care how they get a tie, if it's the ugliest tie in the world, or if we even somehow get like a 1-0 win or something like that, just scrape by with the win, any single way. I think that's a massive result, getting anything from this game, but I have to agree. I think going back home next week is a much bigger priority, and we just got to get through this game with some of the absences we have and just try to put in a good performance, and hopefully, we can find something from the game, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think we could find if we can find something, I think that's a big win in general. Like if we could, even if it's a small margin win or a tie, like I think that would be big for the Galaxy in terms of this game. And even when if you look back at it later on in the season, we're gonna be like, okay, that if we get a result, like hey, that was a big result, right? So like we were down in that game, we didn't have all our players, but we still got something, right? So I think yeah, if we try to squeak by it, I think that'd be great for us, but. Yeah, I mean, in terms of going into this game, I don't know. It might be, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised with the loss. I was gonna say though as well. I mean, Seattle did play 2 games this week. They played on Saturday. They played on Tuesday. So it's like I don't know if that has an effect with Seattle for Seattle. Do you think that might affect Seattle in some sort of way? I mean, I don't think so because in sense of they played on Tuesday and they're playing on Sunday, so they're gonna have a little bit more time to, I guess, have a break in that in this week.
No, I mean, you exactly said it yourself. They play on Tuesday, which is a day earlier than the normal midweek Wednesday game would be, and they play on Sunday, which is a day later than the normal Saturday game would be. So they have two advantages there, and they came off a really good performance, so that's going to give them a lot of momentum. And yeah, I mean, I think that's actually an advantage for them, if anything, and it's going to be a very difficult game for sure. It's going to be a very hard fought game for the Galaxy. It's going to be a very uphill climb for sure. Already with Ricky Puig and Jolich, it's not an easy game, but without him, it just makes it that much more difficult. We got to go out there and hopefully try to get something together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, hopefully we get something together. Because yeah, I mean, obviously you're gonna have two big, you know, pieces out of this game, so we got to get something out of it. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully we get something, but at the same time, again, don't be shocked that this is a loss. And I don't think, you know, even if they did lose, it's something to overreact about. We know the circumstances going into this game, and I think that's that might make it a little bit more bearable. If we do lose, I guess in a sense, but. Yeah, I mean, of course, we'll see what happens. Like we say, we can only hope for the best. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. But any other points you want to say about the Seattle game before we go?
Yeah, I will say though, like you said it yourself, if we did lose, I don't think it'd be the end of the world. And look again, like it's not like 2023 where we had like 1 or 2 wins out of our first like 11 or 12 games. Like no, I mean we have some wins, we have 5 wins, we have 3 ties. Even if we did lose at Seattle, which is a strong possibility considering all our limitations going into this game, we'd probably drop to like third or fourth or fifth place. We wouldn't drop to 13th or 14th place. And then we're coming back home next week. We're getting some pieces back. And then we're going on the road again for a midweek game and another tough road game. But then after that, you're at home for a little bit more. Then you're going to get more home games throughout the course of a season. So at least like, even if we do lose this game, we're still in a decent position, which is something we want to see and not get in a hole early like we were last season. So you could still be fine, but obviously, losing would not be good again. And then, it puts more pressure on you at home. But, at least you're not climbing out of a hole. You got yourself a bit of a cushion early on with some of our good performances earlier in the season.
Right, definitely. I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, like I said earlier too, it was just like the Galaxy. As much as the loss kind of, it's a disappointing loss with Austin. It's like at the same time, it's like we're still in a good spot. We still, they're still exceeding, I guess, our expectations that what we thought going into this season. So it's like the Galaxy are in a good spot right now. And again, even if they do lose this game, I don't think that affects them drastically or anything like that. That's not going to derail their season or anything like that. It's just that the circumstances that we're going into this game makes it a lot more difficult going up against Seattle. And again, if we squeak by with the result, good for us. But if we don't, like, it's not the end of the world. We'll have our ways, and we'll be back. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. But anyways, I think that'll do it for the recap and for the episode in general. So we can't thank you guys enough for listening and watching. If you want to follow me on IG, follow me at Insider Galaxy and at on IG and on X. If you want to go follow the Galaxy Central, go follow them at LA Galaxy Central on IG. And so, yeah, of course, go follow us there. And anything you want to say to the listeners and the watchers before we go?
No, hopefully we go out there and compete, and hopefully we can come out of Seattle with a really good result.
Yeah, hopefully we do. But, like we said, we can only hope for the best. But anyways, thank you guys. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your night. And, let's go try to get those points. But anyways, thank you guys. And G's up.
7 words beat.